Daniel. I'm 24, I'm from London, and I'm a cisgender gay man. So I think coming out to my dad was probably the most challenging coming out experience that I had. Everyone else I found a lot easier. And there are a range of reasons for that. I think my dad grew up in a generation where gay people and LGBT people were treated very differently to how they are now. My dad was born in 1964, so just 3 years before homosexual acts were decriminalised. And he lived in his 20s, he lived through the AIDS crisis. And so his near daily experience was sort of seeing tabloids that presented gay people in a really negative way. You know, this was the time when certain tabloids were saying that the AIDS crisis was God's purge of gay people, and there's a huge amount of misinformation about gay people. And so I think my dad, from that, he had a lot of negative views about LGBT people, and that was quite challenging as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old who had just realised that they were gay. I think the other reason was that he was a man, and being born as a man in the 1960s came with a lot of expectations about what type of person you would be. You know, men loved sport, men didn't really show emotions, they were distant from their sons, and most of all, I think men loved women. And so when he was presented with a son who didn't enjoy sport nearly as much as him, who had the emotions of 5 people, and who loved men, I think that created a really complex situation. And I think for me, as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old who had just realised that they were gay, I felt very vulnerable, because I had to try and figure out how I could navigate this part of my identity, something that I couldn't change, while also trying to make sure that my dad still loved me. And so for a lot of the early years of my adolescence, I spent a lot of time worrying that maybe I wouldn't have the acceptance of my dad. And that was a really challenging period. I ultimately did come out to him. I came out to him at the age of 18, and he actually found out not through me, but through some video project that I was doing online. And he actually came across that video online, and at the time I was devastated, because it felt like I hadn't been able to tell him myself, and that I'd been exposed or outed in a way. And that was difficult, but looking back on it now, I think I'm actually really glad that he found out that way. From there, things actually got a lot better. My dad reassured me that he loved me, and in many ways, I got a lot of the acceptance that I thought I would never have from him. I'd be lying if I said that things were entirely easy from that point onwards. There were challenges, and I think, you know, someone who has grown up with quite a fixed view of gay people and is not used to having those views challenged, I think it's very difficult to suddenly change your mind about those things. But over time, things got a lot better. I think as a gay person, I've had in the past quite a complex relationship with my mental health. And I think a lot of that is because I spent many years in the closet. So from the age of 11 up until the age of 17, 18, most people didn't know that I was gay. And that has a big impact on your mental health. Being in the closet isn't just about not saying the words I'm gay. It's almost a way of life. You spend a huge amount of time trying to make sure that no one finds out about your sexuality. It's the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you sit with other people. There are so many aspects of being gay that you have to conceal for many years, and that can be incredibly challenging and exhausting thing to do over the course of several years. And that really, I think, took a toll on my mental health. It meant that when I was around 17, I had quite bad depression and anxiety. I was really lucky in that I got help for that. So there was a teacher in my school who noticed that I'd become more distant from my friends. I had lost quite a bit of weight. I'd just become generally more withdrawn and less happy. And he asked me to come to his office one day. And I went along and I sat down and he said, I know you're going through something incredibly challenging right now. And I don't know what it is, but I can't let you go through it on your own. And I couldn't bring myself to tell him that I was gay at that point. I just didn't have the courage. But at that point, he introduced me to a counsellor at our school. And initially, I didn't want anything to do with a counsellor. I was really scared about what it would involve, and I didn't want to open up about these negative feelings that I was having, and I was still so scared of being found out or exposed as a gay person. But I gave it a go, and over the course of several months, the counselling really helped to build up my confidence, and eventually I found the courage to say for the first time that I was gay. And I can honestly say that saying those words for the first time was one of the most freeing experiences of my life. I'd spent so much time worrying endlessly about someone finding out and the consequences of that, that when I finally got to say those words and be honest about a part of my identity that I kept concealed for so long, it was such a great feeling. And since then, my mental health has been so much better than how things were before. I think mental health is a lifelong process. There are always going to be ups and downs, and there are times when I still struggle now, but my mental health is much better than it was in my teenage years. When I realised that I was gay, I felt like I needed to compensate in other areas of my life. And so I spent a huge amount of time trying to be really great academically and throw myself into extracurricular activities and try to be the best in those. And I was aiming for perfection in every area of my life to try and make up for what I thought was a really big flaw in my character that I could never change. When I first saw this teacher, I was in denial about all of those negative feelings and didn't want to see a counsellor because of that. But he asked if I'd be happy to speak to them, invited her to his office as well. I think I was really, really lucky and quite privileged to have been noticed, to have a teacher who saw that there was something going on that was not right, that I was really struggling. And I often think, had that teacher not stepped in then, maybe I wouldn't be out of the closet now. Maybe I would still be struggling with the same things I was struggling with then. I would really encourage anyone who is struggling with those feelings, who is in the closet and is going through a similar experience as my own, to really have the courage to reach out and to know that in school, teachers are really on your side. When I was in school, I believed that a lot of the teachers would not react very well to me coming out to them or telling them that I was having a really difficult time. I thought at best they would find it really awkward talking about my mental health or talking about my sexuality. And at worst, I thought they would just be disgusted. And so I couldn't bring myself to tell them. But I think you really need to trust that those teachers have seen it all before, that many of them will have been working with kids for years and are used to dealing with the complex experience that is growing up as an adolescent, whether you are LGBT or not. And so trust that your teachers can help you. Also, going to a GP can be a really beneficial thing, and just talking about how you feel. I think often people feel like GPs are only for physical health problems, but actually some of the best experiences that I've had when going to a GP are those times when I've gone to them and said, actually, I'm really struggling with my mental health and I need support with that. So they can be a really great source of people to talk to as well. I think starting university was a really big turning point for me in terms of feeling more comfortable as an LGBT plus person. And I think the reason for that is when I was in school, my world seemed very small. I saw the same 5, 10 closest friends every day in school, nearly every day of my life for several years, all the way from sort of the age of 11 up until the age of 18. And there weren't really that many opportunities to get to know other people outside of that. That is your world. And then when I finished school, I took a year out. I worked for a few months, and I went traveling on my own for 6 months. And I met so many more people than I knew at school. And what I learned while I was on that year out was that most people just don't really care about your sexuality. I think I had the chance to kind of recreate who I was. I was meeting people the first time and they didn't know anything about me. It was just so different from school. And so I kind of had the opportunity to practice getting to know new people and to feel comfortable in my identity. So when I started at university, I had all of these new social skills and I felt so much less shy and withdrawn than I felt in school. And it gave me the opportunity to get to know people when I was myself, when I felt completely comfortable as a gay man. And so when we were first introduced and we got talking about our lives, me being gay was just something that came up in passing, in conversation. It wasn't a big deal. And I think I really just developed this attitude that, was like, if anyone does have an issue with this, then it's their problem. And there are so many people in this university that it doesn't really matter if 1 or 2 people have an issue with it. I just don't need to be friends with them, which was so different from the mindset that I had at school. And then I also went to the LGBT society at my university. And that was brilliant in that for the first time, I was meeting lots of other LGBT plus people who had the same experiences as me, who had gone through the same struggles and come out the other side of it actually being a much better person in many ways because of the difficult experiences that they'd had. And so I went from, in school, my sexuality being something that I hated about myself and that if I could have changed, I would have changed in an instant, to being at university where being gay was something that I was really proud of. And now if you'd asked me if I wanted to be gay or straight, I would always choose to be gay because of the experiences that it's given me. And I think if you had told the 11-year-old me that I would choose to be gay, I would have never believed you at the age of 11. So I think my relationship with LGBT plus stereotypes has really changed over time. I think everyone knows the gay male stereotype. It's the guy in school who is terrible at sports. It's the guy who is limp-wristed. It's the guy whose friends are all girls. It's negative, basically, because it's different, because you are an outsider. And so when I realized that I was gay at the age of 11, I was so scared of becoming that stereotype. I thought that somehow if I came out to my friends and my family as gay, I'd go from being me to suddenly becoming the gay stereotype and being a completely different person. I almost thought that would happen overnight. It sounds silly saying it now, but that's what I really believed, and I thought that I would lose a lot of my friends because of that. And so the stereotype was something that I was really scared of at the time. It was something that I didn't want anything to do with. That changed, I think, when I came out at the age of 17. The reason my relationship with stereotypes changed was because of two main things. First, I learned that a lot of stereotypes just aren't accurate. They don't really reflect all people in the LGBT community. I know tons of gay men who love sports and would pass as a straight person, so no one would ever know they were gay. But secondly, I think more importantly than that, I've just learned that even if you do have things about you that are the same as the stereotype, so if you're a bit effeminate, or you don't like sports, or most of your friends are girls, it just doesn't really matter. And in fact, those are qualities in myself that I actually now really value. So they're things that initially I was really scared of being a part of my personality. And now there's something that I really value because they make me different and they make me unique. So there's something that I really, really treasure. And my relationship with stereotypes has changed massively as a result. My mum was amazing when I came out. She has been someone who has always been there for me and is happy to talk with me about absolutely anything. And so when I came out of the closet, just before that, I was terrified about coming out still, just because I didn't know what she'd think, and mainly because I was scared that she'd really want grandchildren and that might affect that. But I never really questioned if she would still love me. I knew that she would still love me. And so she was one of the first people that I came out to. And her response was brilliant. I mean, I think her first response was, "Oh, that's great. I didn't want grandkids anyway." And I just remember laughing so much about it, and it actually being something that she was really happy about, and she was really happy to celebrate. And so it was really helpful having a parent who was incredibly supportive. And there was quite a big gap between me telling my mum and me telling my dad finding out that I was gay. But all of that time, she was there to support me, and she was there to help me build up the courage and the confidence to tell other people that I was gay.